From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. It's a busy time in Tennessee politics, as it always is. Early voting started this week for the March 1st presidential preference primary here in Tennessee. And the Tennessee General Assembly is in full swing here in Nashville. That means we have lots to discuss, to talk about with our guest today on Inside Politics. She's Mary Mancini, the State Democratic Party Chair. Mary, thanks for coming back on the show.
Thanks, Pat. Appreciate you having me.
First, let's talk about the presidential race in your party. It's become quite a contest.
It has become quite a contest, yes.
Are you surprised? Most people thought Hillary Clinton was just going to be the heir apparent. She'd been leading the polls for 4 years.
Sure.
Nobody gave Bernie Sanders much of a chance. Now, at least in the first two contests, she just barely squeaked through in Iowa. She got clobbered in New Hampshire. Suddenly, it looks like she's got a race on her hands.
Well, and I think that could be the perception. And I think, you know, what the people that feel the burn are experiencing is a different way to talk about issues, and so it appeals to a lot of folks. But I think you have to take the entire primary season and not just look at what happened in Iowa and not just look at what happened in New Hampshire. There's a lot of primary left, and you know, it seems as if she's going to do well in South Carolina, so that's something to look at. So it's just you know, looking at the whole thing instead of just in pieces, I think, is very important when you're looking at this race.
A lot of talk about anger among voters, but I sense it's a different kind of anger among Republicans than we have in Democrats. What's the anger among Democrats? Because it does seem to be there.
Yeah, actually, I don't see any kind of anger, really. I just see a difference in sort of an aspirational tone of what this country could be versus looking at what presidential politics is realistically and looking at it pragmatically. So I'm not sure if there's anger there. I think it's just a different way to look at it.
What's the magic that Bernie Sanders has with young people? Where does it come from?
Again, I think it's an aspirational tone that he has, right? I think it may be a continuation of President Obama's hope and change message, and a lot has changed. But I think for some young people, things haven't changed enough, right? They're feeling the brunt of student loan debt and some other, you know, other serious things like the Black Lives Matter movement, right? So I think they're seeing things that things have changed. It's almost like we've taken 2 steps forward, right? But we've also taken 1 step back, and I think he represents more of an aspirational tone.
What's been wrong with Hillary Clinton's campaign so far? She even lost the women's vote in New Hampshire. I mean, she doesn't seem to be connecting the way I think she'd like to, and she seems to be in the process of retooling both her message and maybe her campaign staff.
Well, I mean, again, you know, look at the whole picture, and when you look at what happened in Ohio and New Hampshire, you know, it may look like that's true, but when you fast forward to South Carolina, it tells a completely different story. So I think we need to look at it that way. But the other thing that I think we need to look at too with Hillary Clinton is she has a powerful story to tell about all the things that she did in her life prior to becoming First Lady. The work that she's done with children and the work that she's done with women, and I think that the problem is that story is not getting out as much as it should, and it's not breaking through the din of the horse race analysis that very often seems to take control of this conversation that we have about the presidential primary.
Is she running too much on her public resume, being First Lady, being Secretary of State, being former senator from New York? Does she need to run on something? Does she not? That doesn't seem to get people excited. Competency is not necessarily what gets people out to say, yeah, we need to.
Well, I don't think it's an either or. It doesn't have to be an either or, right? It can be both. I mean, I think that there's a way as a candidate that you tell your story, and once you get your story out there, then you pivot into, you know, your qualifications. And you know, she also has a good story. Her upbringing wasn't the easiest too. So these are all things that can be combined with her resume.
Now, Senator Sanders has stayed away from a good bit of this issue, but the Republicans haven't, certainly, and won't in the fall if she's the candidate. Hillary Clinton, in a lot of the polling, seems to have some trust issues with the voters, particularly surrounding the FBI investigation that's ongoing about her use of emails while she's Secretary of State. What can she do to mitigate that through her campaign?
Well, I think it's what she's doing right now, which is to talk about, to try to get the truth out there about some of the things that have been leveled, the accusations that have been leveled at her. That, look, there's been a campaign since Bill Clinton was in office and before actually, to beat this drum of, the Clintons aren't trustworthy, and it's been going on for decades, right? And it's a hard thing to break through. So again, she just needs to, I think, talk about what she's done in her life, all her life. Perhaps maybe have some surrogates that can also talk about how what she's done have impacted her, have impacted them rather, and continue to talk about all the positive things that she's done for this country.
You talked about the importance of her campaign and what's going to happen in South Carolina. How important is Tennessee? We're not very far behind. We're March 1st. That's not far behind what happens in South Carolina. If she's going to do a comeback, does it have to start not only in South Carolina but here?
Yes, but that entire SEC primary, right, is very important on that day, all those states that are voting on March 1st. It's not just Tennessee. But yeah, Tennessee is very important as well. Because, again, you go from South Carolina and then you have just a block of states that are voting on March 1st.
It's the first time we have multiple states on one day.
Exactly, and that's why it's important.
Now, this particular situation, both candidates, both Sanders and Clinton, have opened offices here. Sanders has office here in Nashville. Clinton has one in both here and in Memphis. Her husband was due, I think, in Memphis as well this week to campaign. She's been here. He has not been here yet. Does he know that perhaps this is not a state he'll do well in?
Senator Sanders, that's actually. It's hard to really say. I'm not that privy to what the actual mechanics of each campaign is doing. I don't know what their plans are for if they're going to open any other offices or anything like that. What I can tell you, though, is I do travel around Tennessee a lot, and there's a couple of things that really kind of warm my heart as I'm traveling the state. The first is that whether you stand with Hillary or you feel the burn, Democrats are excited about this race, right? So that's the first thing. It's really sort of getting people pumped up for the election in November, and the entire process. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, we have county Democratic parties that are having events like debate watching parties, and they're not just having them in a silo and then the Hillary Clinton campaign goes on to one place and the Sanders campaign goes to another. They're all coming together and having parties and events together, right? And presenting each candidate based on their issues. And that is a great thing to see. That's exactly what you want to see. That's exactly why primaries are good.
Mary Mancini is our guest. She's the chairman of the Tennessee Democratic Party. Back to continue our conversation with her after you watch these messages.